What was the worst thing you did as a teenager to earn money? Wasn't a teenager. I think I was around 8 or 9 years old. Found a giant box of P-Mags that the neighbor's wife must have made him toss out with the trash. There must have been at least 100 of them. I would bring 3 or 4 a day and trade them to the kids at school for their lunch money. Got busted by a teacher after a few weeks of this. Dad was proud of his 8-year-old entrepreneur. I convinced a kid in school that my 10,000 lira bill, Turkish money, was legit. And it was. Sold it to him for 20 euros. Happiest kid all day. I think it was worth like 3 euros. Sold oregano and other weed lookalikes. Almost. Rolled into joints to 14 and 15 year olds when I was 17. I've never smoked or even touched weed in my life then. Craziest part is when they try to smoke it. On the semi-rare occasions that they are even able to light them, they would pretend the smoke got them real high. If they weren't able to light them, I'd make fun of them a little bit about how they don't know to smoke the real crap. Nobody wanted to be uncool, so nobody spoke up, and I dealt for over a year before I got bored. I dealt alone and discreetly. I made sure I made it look shady enough for it to be a real dealing. I don't feel that bad because I kept them from trying the real thing until they were old enough to be responsible. I got the idea from a joke or a story of someone doing something similar. In high school, my buddy decided to challenge the basketball team. They would all have to suck up snot and spit it in a cup and he would drink it. We would have to give him all the money in our pockets. Most of the team had change in their pockets, so they were hacking the biggest ones they could manage. I had to leave at the thought of it, but he ended up drinking a cup of snot and only made $3. Actual vomit was produced. Don't worry, I re-eated it. There was this autistic kid in my class and no one would hang out with him. I took pity on him one day and decided I would be friends with him. I went to go strike up a conversation and he told me he didn't have any money today. I was confused, so I asked him what he meant. Turns out he was paying Simon, the most popular kid in the school, $20 a week to hang out and talk to him. I told him I would do it for $10 a day. This went on for about 2 months until he found real friends. I still feel like a douchebag to this day. At least you were half the douchebag Simon was. This is assuming, of course, that there was a typo on the $20 week, $10 day situation. Otherwise the story makes no sense. Sold drugs, mainly weed, ecstasy and some prescription stuff. Made about $500 minimum a week just going to school every day. I had a great time and a fantastic wardrobe. Remember 10th Prestige lobbies in Modern Warfare 2? My friend and I would trick kids into buying us map packs in return for 10th Prestige, which they never got. TLDR. I sold valuable life lessons for 1,600 Microsoft points. How we did that too. Never underestimate the stupidity of COD players. In the USA during the 90s, kids involved in sports at our schools went around selling candy to raise money for uniforms, travel, etc. to other schoolmates. Me, being quite the enterprising 8th grader, decided to partake in the candy selling for personal profit, but with a small twist. Everyone was selling common candy like Snickers, Reese's, M&M's for like $2 per, so I decided to sell my candy for $1 each, and it wasn't regular candy. Back in the day, a grocery store went out of business and auctioned off aisles of the store to open bidders. My dad purchased the candy aisle and it was full of this disgusting candy by a brand called Estes. I didn't think much of it, so decided to sell it, and the only thing that wasn't bad were the gumdrops, but all the other candy looked better than tasted. Fast forward to my biggest day of selling them, which coincided with our school's final ski club day of the year. All these kids bought candy from me since it was cheaper and looked pretty good. Little did I know that this candy was weight loss diet candy and would essentially force bowel movements. It got so bad that lines started forming at the nurse's office to use the comfy private bathroom, which alarmed the school into thinking there was a food poisoning cafeteria situation. Once everyone figured out it was me, the principal actually felt relieved and I only got in school suspended for a day. A good amount of kids missed the trip due to Montezuma's wrath. From that day forward, new policies were put in place to prevent independent food sales not sanctioned by school. It was funny, after BC at the time, the horror movie Candyman was big and I inevitably inherited the nickname due to this incident. Stood out in front of school spring events collecting a $3 parking fee. I live in LA where everyone is already pee off, so as you can imagine I almost got beat up a few times. My father's fraternity did this in college exactly one time. They set out some cones and filled up the practice field and charged $1 a car. This was in the 50s. Then when it was filled they packed up and left. School didn't know who was to blame but let everyone know not to do it again. The biggest issue was the damage done to the field, not the money. During my senior year of high school I had 2 semesters where I was a teacher's aide for the science biology teacher. Basically my job was to grade quizzes and tests and enter the scores into the teacher's database. Well, I was also taking one of the teacher's classes, so one day I decided I needed to up my grade a little. I got caught by another girl in the class who asked if I would do it for her, and instead of blackmailing me, she offered me $10. So I took it and upped some of her scores. Over the next month or so, the teacher stayed oblivious and more students were coming up offering me cash to change their grades. So I did, again and again. Eventually worked out a pricing structure. $10 for quizzes, $25 for tests and $50 for bumps up a letter grade for the semester. I made so much money and everything was going good until the teacher's son Matt confronted me one day. Word had gotten to him and he wanted me to up his grade too. I did it for him for free just to make sure he didn't let his mom in on the scam. I bought these $1 necklaces before they became popular in my school and I sold them for $5 when they became popular. That's not bad. That's business. Fenced luxury items. Go in touch with a pimp that way, who then offered me a job at one of his clubs. Spend half a year doing bookkeeping and being a bartender in a brothel. Fun times. Loads of cash. Easygoing clients and nice co-workers, both in front of and behind the bar. Crap hit the fan 3 months after I left. Turned out his brothels were mostly there to front for a number of fraudulent real estate transactions. And he got caught. One of my co-workers got arrested and spent 2 weeks in jail before they understood he had nothing to do with the shenanigans taking place. They still hit that guy with an €10,000 in taxes though. Stole metal dust caps of cars and sold them to people for their bikes. Or stole packets of cigarettes from my older sister and sold them a cigarette at a time. I worked the bottle return at a local supermarket 3 afternoons a week. It was a pretty relaxing gig. I'd sort out people's bottles and cans and give them a voucher they could use in the main supermarket at checkout. The room I was in had cathedral ceilings and a single recessed speaker piping in Weeb 108, a local radio station. But this was 1985, and thus they played, at least once per hour, We Are the World, One More Night and Sussudio. My only weapon was the bottle of Windex they gave me to keep the counter clean. I eventually started to hop up on the counter a few times a day and attempt to spray Windex into the speaker to short it out. It never worked. Used to be a small underpass under the train line next to my house growing up. When it rained the underpass occasionally filled up with water to about 2.5 to 3 foot deep, especially if the drains hadn't been cleared for a while. Myself, a brother and a friend used to wait for cars to get to the edge of it. A lot of time they asked us if it was okay to drive through, which we obviously said yes to. If you keep your revs up it generally was, but most people were idiots. We used to charge $5 to $10 to push the cars out. Occasionally the drains in the underpass might have needed a bit of a hand getting clogged before a storm. I started a pyramid scheme when I was 15 to buy my first car. $150, $5K in 4 months before getting banned from eBay and PayPal. I was 18 and working at a burger place. My boss said he'd give me $35 to drink a cup full of hood grease. The grease from the burgers that goes up into the hood and gathers all day. It was around closing and we were bored and I really wanted $35. The cup was the size of maybe 3 liquor shots and tasted like hamburgers. My boss almost threw up, but it didn't taste too bad. Easy money. And to this day, his turds still slide out like it ain't thin. I don't know if anyone will enjoy this, but I want to throw out the best way that I made money as a teenager, working at the seasonal sales jobs with all of my friends. I'm talking about the pumpkin patch, Christmas tree lot, and, to lesser extent, the Easter egg hunt area most small towns in America have. It was amazing. Every day after school in October, December, and March, me and a couple of buddies of mine would ride our bikes, or drive as juniors and seniors, to the lot and spend all afternoon evening making $6 an hour plus tips. None of us were very wealthy, so coming home with $7,100 in cash was amazing. Plus a free pumpkin Christmas tree. When we were seniors we discovered the joy in drinking and procured a bottle of schnapps from someone's dad's liquor cabinet. At the end of a shift we would all take a pull and count that day's earnings. This is going to sound dumb, but we used to roll them into balls secured with rubber bands, then race them down the stairs at a friend's house. Great way to make some extra cash and some good memories. TLDR. If you're 17, go get a job selling pumpkins and Christmas trees with your friends. Pickpocketed Yu-Gi-Oh cards from my classmates to sell via our junior high thieves guild. My friends and I were inspired to start. Thanks, Tez. Morrowind. One time in high school I sat outside the lunchroom with a sign that said give me money. I got $5 and a Reese's cup. Sold herb to make money to buy my own herb. I had a dealer who sold me 14 grams for $90, so I'd sell 9 grams. Keep 5 for smoking and keep this up till I made $90. If I sucked it up and got a real job sooner I could have made $90 in 2 days rather than over a whole week. Never got caught, but the stress was not worth it. Where the frick were you getting a half for $90? My girlfriend's grandma was seriously obese. I mean, when she would move from her chair the rest of the family would stand as near to the walls as possible. It was a huge event anytime she left the house because she was so huge. This lady loved the crap out of Whoppers from Burger King. She would call me all the time to go get her a Whopper and not tell anyone. She paid $20 per Whopper. I wish I could have that job back, but unfortunately she didn't live very long. But unfortunately I helped her die. Well, it might not seem that bad, but I guess it is the worst. I would do people's culminatings for money. Would make $100 at the end of each semester. Worked at a cucumber farmer's field for $3.75 when I was 12-13, so 14-15 years ago. Laying on an uncomfortable wooden plank, pulled by a tractor at low speed and picking up cucumbers of the plants by hand. A kid got ran over that summer and died. Went back to work the next week. At 16, I got paid to walk on some guy in high heels like once a week. It was pretty okay. I used to have my MP3 player and listen to Madonna while trampling on his back. The front was a bit more tricky though. Thighs are really slippery when you're walking in stilettos on them. €70 for 30 minutes. 10/10 do recommend. Shittiest thing I did was pretending to sell lottery tickets for a made up charity. There was no charity, no prizes, just me and my friend buying a shitload of candy for the money. Sorry. Pretended I was a girl from my high school on an online teen chat website during my freshman year to solicit $5 webcam shows that would pay for my RuneScape membership. There are a lot of gullible creeps out there. We used to sneak into the bait shop, steal crawfish and minnows, then walk to the front door and sell them back to the bait shop. I did everyone's semester project for one of my math classes. $25 for a C, $35 for a B, $50 for an A. I bought a used car with the money I made. I was 16 and worked a 3 crappy jobs so I could pay rent and still live with luxuries like eating and going out to get wankered. Anyway, at one of these jobs I worked with a bird whose daughter had briefly gone to the same school as I. I remembered her, but I did remember her being quite a munter. Anyway, the mother of this bird told me that her daughter was now 16 and really needed to get laid. Apparently she had seen me going into work with her mum one day, remember me from school and thought I was good looking back then, and had told her mother back when we were in school together that she was in love with me. Anyway, when she saw me again going into work she apparently told her mum that she still was in love with me but was too nervous to ask me out. With this information in hand the mother asked if I would frick her daughter, to which, as a teen not starved for coital relationships, I refused, citing her daughter's mingingness. This mother was not willing to take no as an answer as she felt her daughter needed to get laid and I was the only male of the species she had shown interest in. With my refusal in mind she returned to me with a new proposal. The mother's new proposal was that she would pay me 20 quid an hour, including date time and transportation costs, to take the daughter to a movie, which the mother would pay for, and to dinner, which the mother would pay for. and then proceed to take her either home or anywhere private and have my way with her. Now, I had morals, so when confronted with this proposal and the knowledge of the daughter's visual disadvantage, I obviously agreed on the spot. The next day the mother brought the daughter to work and I invited her to go on a date with me. I am unsure to this day whether the daughter is aware of the arrangement, but I am sure it cannot have been healthy given her first time resulted in a man who never returned. TLDR. As a 16-year-old I prostituted myself for a co-worker's daughter at the co-worker's request. That was more fake and British than Victoria Beckham. Pretended to be Santa Claus. Every now and then, whenever I was in a youthful place like a club, yeah, they booked a Santa, I for fun changed the lyrics to the songs I was meant to sing. For example, you better not pout, you better not cry, you better not shout, I'm going in dry, Santa Claus is coming to town. When Amazon Mechanical Turk was new, Google Maps used it to confirm that pictures on their street view actually matched the addresses they said they were. You got a few cents for finishing one whether you said it was right or wrong. So I and a bunch of other people set up or used Greaser Monkey scripts in Firefox to spam complete dozens of these little Turk tasks as fast as possible, saying no every time. I made about $500 doing this. As a young teenager I worked at a non-USA dog shelter pound and one day had to help provide a lethal injection to a litter of born yesterday puppies that somebody dropped off at the entrance in the middle of the night. Stopped working there soon after as I heard the pups' cries in my nightmares. Please spay or neuter your pets or at least take care of the litter until they can be adopted. 6th grade. I had just moved from a rather rural area into the inner city. I rode the bus every day, and at my bus stop there was a newspaper carrier or whatever the proper term is. One day I happened to notice that every morning, at least a dozen people bought a paper on the way to work. So, the next morning I brought a few supplies with me to school. For the next several weeks, every other day, I would jam the coin return spring inside the machine so that the button seems to work, yet the actual mechanism itself stayed pressed in all the time. I then taped a piece of cardboard inside the coin return. I crap you not, every other day $10 in quarters. I got caught after the act due to the jingle in my cargo shorts. Parents never found out though, so it was worth it. I went to school with this kid K-12. He was always the weird kid. You know that kid that pretends he is a hamster and always makes weird noises and crap? Yeah, that kid. He was honestly an okay kid. Kinda interesting and funny, but freaking weird. He rode my bus and I would chat with him and stuff. I got a kick out of the kid. One day on the bus, freshman year, he told me he would put a bobby pin down his urethra for $25. I negotiated and got him down to $10. He made the bobby pin into a right angle because I told him he must go full length to get my money, or half length if it was bent out completely flat, and he shoved that thing down his urethra. I didn't watch him actually do it. He was in the seat behind me. I waited a minute for him. He let out a small, painful sounding grunt, then said okay you can look, and by the way I'm a grower not a shower. I looked and sure as frick he did it. I paid him $15 instead of the $10 we agreed upon because, well, that weird son of a bee deserved every penny in my opinion. Went to a friend's house to clean it. What I didn't know was that she was a hoarder and had 5 cats and 2 dogs. She hasn't cleaned in God knows how long. I had to keep coming back. I'm still deciding if it was worth the money to scrape fossilized dog crap off the ground. Sold Easter candy door to door. We got our hands on a form from a church, along with a catalog of the candies offered. We were bringing around $300 for a month's worth of orders. Most people paid in cash. We never turned the orders in. I would get hired at fast food places and go through the training, watch the videos, mirror people, and then when it was actually time to work I'd quit. Stop in a week later for my check and move on to the next one. When I was strapped for cash, I hit up the M4M section of Craigslist and found a dude that wanted me to jerk off in front of him for $50. I emailed him and he seemed pretty legit, so I headed over to his place, jerked off, nutted, and left $50 richer. The heck of it is, I can no longer jerk off to any P with Rachel Starr in it. Had a friend who was really rich. He would give me lots of money games to find him cigarettes from the ashtrays off of people's back porches. I snuck around at night and would collect dozens of half-smoked butts. I worked in a salad factory when I was 14. I was underage, but the company didn't matter. It just picked up a load of us at 4 AM in the morning and brought us back at 3 PM. We got paid $5 an hour to stand in a refrigerated factory for hours at a time, wearing a t-shirt and a thin lab coat. We were given butter knives to chop up semi-frozen heads of lettuce, knives to blunt you could slash your friend across the back of the hand and leave little more than a bruise. We stood in line, yanking lettuces off the conveyor belt and hacking them to pieces on a metal tray, then tipping the contents into a hopper. Those hoppers went into bagged salads for supermarkets and restaurants all over the country. The boredom was unimaginable, but the pain was worse. Our feeble teenage bodies weren't ready to stand for 4 hours at a time, let alone in freezing temperatures while doing manual labor. Our soft hands developed blisters, which then popped inside our plastic gloves, coating our remaining skin in a bloody ooze. Our feet went numb, our knees knocked, our teeth chattered. Slowly, the warmth of life was sucked out of us both figuratively and literally. An extra job was to make sure that no foreign objects got onto the conveyor belt, that no dead birds or bugs or heaps of manure ended up in the lettuce hoppers. If you saw a chunk of something that wasn't green and floppy, you were supposed to grab it and chuck it into the waste bin so that it didn't get dropped into the food hopper. But we just couldn't give a toss. The teenagers were far too squeamish to pick up a mushed up bird that had been squashed by the tractor, or to handle a live worm even if you were wearing gloves. So a lot of it was simply swept into other people's hoppers when their backs were turned. Ultimately, those squashed birds and bugs would be bagged up with the lettuce and sent to restaurants like Burger King or McDonald's, where you can be sure an equally apathetic teen would simply pluck the carcass from the bag, trash it, and use the rest of the lettuce in your food. The only happy memory was the severed rabbit's head that got passed from person to person as a sort of mascot. We used it to scare the fresh meat. We would have kept the rabbit's foot, but no one ever found it. I printed money. Oh, not lots. I also printed tickets for concerts, for the local disco, and sold them. In my house there was one of the first laser color printers and I used it at night. The money at my country was very crappy back then. They changed it in the 90s to a more secure thing. Not me personally, but I do know a guy who had the nail on his big toe removed. Another guy sucked on it for £1. I mean, I can't fault the guy. He didn't just give it a little peck. He earned his pound. I had a fake kid in high school, so I was the one who would buy the alcohol for parties. Eventually, other groups of people heard I could hook them up, so I started charging people to deliver booze to underage house parties. One evening, I was passing by a hole in the wall sports bar, and I noticed they left a keg shell sitting out back. I swiped it. It would cost me $40 to fill it with cheap beer, but I would charge people $140 to deliver it. By the end of one summer, I would have about 10 kegs out at parties all over the North Houston area. It all ended when a party was busted and they ratted me out as the one who supplied the booze. The cops made my life heck at home, school and work, but I was never arrested or formally charged with anything, because they couldn't prove I was the one who was filling and delivering the kegs. TLDR, had a fake kid, bought cheap booze and sold it to kids at parties for a ridiculous markup. I sold magazines for a crook telemarketing company to unsuspecting people when I was 14. I stopped working there after a few short months because I realized selling a pitch to potentially good people made me feel really crappy and dishonest. It made me feel especially crappy calling them on Sundays. One day, I told my boss I was going to go to the bathroom, went upstairs, turned the corner, and walked right out of the building. That's pretty much how I quit. My friends. Not I would go door to door collecting donations for lung cancer research. He was a bold kid. They were 15 at the time. BC he would always smoke cigs while talking to people. All the money collected went towards acid. This went on for months. I would have an older friend buy some vodka. I would cut it with water half and half into mason jars. I would then sell it as my uncle's homemade brew. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.